Everybody knows you just can't wander where you want to in the countryside. Almost all of it is privately owned, so if you go for a walk, you've got to stick to the footpaths or find places like country parks. But even the footpaths and parks are out of bounds to a large number of people, the disabled. Today we look at new moves to open up the countryside to everyone. We've also got a rather wry Australian look at that great British tradition, the country show. First though, here's News Update.
Somerset County Council is to put 150 tenant farms on the market to raise money for its education service. It's the first local authority to resort to large-scale farm sales to solve its financial problems. But Michael Fry, spokesman for the tenant farmers, said it'll limit one of the few ways a young farmer can get into the industry. Existing tenants are protected by law and can't be evicted, but they'll be offered discounts to buy each property.
The number of wind turbines in the countryside is set to increase sharply over the next few years. Private companies have submitted plans for 41 wind farms with up to 100 turbines on each site, mainly in Wales and the West Country. The government is reviewing its alternative energy strategy and is under pressure from environmentalists to raise its target of generating 2% of electricity from renewable sources by the end of the decade.
The failed Midlands farming cooperative Craven Grain has called in the receiver, and the fraud squad is investigating the collapse. More than 150 farmers face losses of around £3 million between them.
The growth of a pioneering partnership scheme to protect wildlife in industrial areas is being held up by the recession. The first Industrial and Nature Conservation Association, or INCA, was set up on Teesside 2 years ago. The former Nature Conservancy Council persuaded companies such as ICI to contribute funds towards wildlife conservation near their sites. But attempts to set up another scheme in the West Midlands have so far failed. Local industrialists say now is not the time to spend money on conservation.
Go for a walk in the countryside and you're bound to come across something like this, either a kissing gate or a stile. They're designed to keep animals like cows and sheep in, but they also keep quite a lot of people out, because obstacles like this can stop disabled people from enjoying the British countryside. In America, it's a very different story, because there, the national parks are required by law to provide barrier-free access, and that helps not only disabled people, but also the elderly and young families with pushchairs. In this country, though, it's left to charitable organisations to try and open up the countryside for the disabled. Back in June, on one of the coldest and wettest days of early summer, a group of riders were out on the Pennine Way. They set off from Carlisle 11 days before, determined to ride the length of this backbone of Britain, and no way was the weather going to spoil their fun. Just as they didn't allow their physical or mental disabilities, ranging from spina bifida to Down syndrome, to get in the way of this great adventure. Not long ago, it was rare to see disabled people out in the countryside. Often for them, it was a no-go area because of obstacles that don't even register with able-bodied people. But now, through the efforts of access groups like the Fieldfare Trust, which organised this long-distance trek, the countryside is slowly being opened up to the disabled.
Oops, Jim's down. Oh, dear. Very good, Jim. What's the score now? 14-11. What's 14-11?
Tell you what to do. Do the flop.
Did you make any garment families there?
There are no real problems in adapting the countryside for people with disabilities. No one wants to see everything tarmacked or spoilt in that respect, because that negates what the countryside's all about. But in terms of putting a ramp here, or widening a bridge, replacing a stile with an access gate, things like that, all those things are very important.
Well, you were a very fit, active outdoor person before you were disabled in a road accident. So when you could get out into the countryside again, what were your feelings? Were you frustrated?
Yeah, extremely so. I think one of the biggest problems was lack of information. I just didn't know where to go. I can remember I would park the car. We've got a lovely picture up in the Lake District of my wife lifting off a stile gate sort of a kissing gate rather, to get access to a riverside track. And that was a common problem. You park the car, you go down a track, and then your options were stopped, and it became, as I say, very, very frustrating. Our approach is very much to work with people with disability to find out what their needs are and to get them involved in the problem-solving process.
And that's exactly what's happening in Harrogate, where a unique partnership is making the local countryside accessible.
So when you shout, when the bat shouts bat, the moth has to shout back moth. And so you can hunt.
Emma Mack of Fieldfair plays a game with slow learners. By pretending to be bats and moths, they find out some of the basics of nature. Emma is Britain's first countryside coordinator for the disabled, bringing together local government officials and volunteers in a project intended to make sure that every out-of-doors event in the Harrogate area doesn't leave out people with disabilities. Other towns could soon be copying the idea.
Moth! He's calling.
And for these children, this game in a local park is just the start.
The children have been doing what's called acclimatisation, an American term, which is basically just getting an awareness and enjoyment of the countryside. It's not a highly sort of scientific or technical approach to environmental studies, but it's designed to sort of promote enjoyment, interest, and instill a few sort of concepts of environmental concepts.
With an older group, Emma brings a meadow back to life by planting wildflowers.
We're hoping to provide the opportunities that the rest of the community have to participate in countryside activities to people with various disabilities. I mean, currently the participation level of people with various disabilities is considerably lower than the rest of the community for a variety of reasons. And through sort of stimulus and example and training and new opportunities, we're hoping to extend that to the disabled groups within the Harrogate district.
Well, integration seems to be the key word. So what's been the reaction of both able-bodied and disabled people to your project? Integration
Can sometimes give a certain amount of fear to local community groups initially, and that's where the sort of training aspect of this project is very important. It's an unfounded fear, but it is... It's a fear of what? A fear that people with disabilities will place demands on the club that they won't be able to meet, that some danger might be involved for them or for the adults with disabilities. So you need to provide the training and the support to show that these fears are unfounded. This game with coloured sticks explains camouflage. Fine. So what colour would you not wear if you wanted to hide in the woodlands? Red and yellow. Green isn't too bad, but probably in this woodland anyhow, the best colour to hide on the ground is...
Brown and green.
Brown and green. Brown probably the best. Very good.
The Bolton Abbey estate, owned by the Duke of Devonshire, is set in some of the most glorious scenery of the Yorkshire Dales National Park. The estate asked Fieldfair for their advice about opening up the Abbey and its famous Strid Woods to disabled people, and that advice has been acted on. One result is 2 scooters now permanently based there. At a ceremony, the Duke presented the keys to Fieldfair.
So it's a very, very happy day, and I'm not only very proud, but very, very pleased to be amongst you. And now I formally hand the keys over to you. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you.
It's all part of a campaign to give first-hand experience of the countryside to people with disabilities. It's much more satisfying to make your own way there instead of being bussed to a vantage point and probably never even getting out of the coach. The scooters are cheap to run and environmentally friendly, and the Strid Woods are no longer an impossible place for those who cannot walk. Once the obstacles have been discovered and removed, the trails were tested out on the scooters and further changes made. Now the paths are smooth and even, and there are no problems, even though Phil Chambers, who led the project, had to go the hard way.
One of the first and most important things, and obvious things, was to eliminate steps and replace them with ramps or slopes. But then when we started using wheelchairs to try them out, it was very obvious that the other thing that caused problems was the side slope on forest walks, and these had to be eliminated as well. And as we look at the estate and work with the Fieldfair Trust, small items like the width of gateways become obvious that we have to increase them or alter them slightly to make access easier. So it's an ongoing evolution, as it were.
For Charlie Stoddart and Billy Sunter, who acted as test drivers when the route was being prepared, the final result means they can get to places at Bolton Abbey they never thought possible.
There's no way I would have walked up here or come up in a wheelchair. It wouldn't get me in a wheelchair because I don't like them. But this, it's been a big godsend to me. Got up without any problem. I'm more content in myself.
You know, I'm a Dales person and I've always liked being outdoors, but since I was confined to a wheelchair, you know, I found it that I can't get out as much. I can get out in my car, all right, that's all right, but, you know, getting out in your car isn't the same as getting out in the countryside like you do walking, you know. This is second to walking, but it's all right.
Basically, Fields Fair's prime aim is to be suicidal. The job that we're doing should be done by other people, so our own real aim is to put ourselves out of business. Having said that, in terms of opening up every opportunity, what we'd like to do is increase opportunities for everyone, to raise awareness so that people with disabilities are considered right from the outset in terms of countryside planning and in terms of any provision in the countryside. That's very much our approach. As I say, it's an awareness-raising one.
As a result of all this, do you think there is now a greater satisfaction amongst disabled people?
Yeah, I'm certain that there is. I was talking just recently to a lady. I asked her what access around parts of the Yorkshire Dales, new footpaths up there, meant to her. And she suddenly started talking not about footpaths and not about independence and sort of buzzwords like that. She was talking about the smell of wild garlic and being able to see the campion. And that's the sort of thing that we're talking about.
I want to take Gordon.
In a few days' time, these fields will be transformed into a showground. There'll be marquees and show rings and upwards of 12,000 people. Ashover Show in Derbyshire is one of the classic English country shows. No big business here, no commercialisation, just deep-rooted tradition. Last year was the show's 60th anniversary, and it took place at the height of that glorious summer. While other agricultural shows have survived the years by turning themselves into rural exhibitions, Ashover Show has stayed local and parochially proud. But for an upside-down look at this most English of shows, we asked a farmer's boy from the Australian outback, Rob Poole, to see what he made of it.
Just one, thanks. Very busy today. Oh, how do I get these?
Well, even the BBC had to pay to get into this one, the fabulous Ashover Show. 60 years on with some time off for brave behaviour during the war. They seem to have got quite a turnout. In fact, more people than you get back home at a city show in Australia. The trick to demystifying these sort of things is to really find out what's going on. To find the stayers, the old-timers that have won all the ribbons, been on a few committees, know the dirt, know the politics. The lay showgoer's term for such a person is a secretary. The show's only had 4 in its 60 years history. Some may call it nepotism, but in Australia we call it politics. And apart from the beer tent, that's what keeps these fine traditions going. The politics of winning. And this is where it all happens. Forget the square mile. Forget Wall Street. This is the real down and dirty, fast and furious, who dares wins business end of your typical country show. Grooming, positioning, mustering all the secrets and skills of generations past. You can see the pressure that both man and beast must endure, and for some, it's all too much, including the cameraman. He got barged by a runaway bull. Well, things are a bit calmer in the dairy ring. Only one of these regal ladies will win today, and you'd get short odds at the bookmaker if you backed one of Anne Holcroft's herd. She's been coming here for years. I think I'll slide over and have an in-depth chat.
So what do you think? Which one's going to win, or have they already picked it?
I think they've picked this. It's the cow in milk at the moment, I think, standing top.
That's the one with the big udder.
Yes, that's right.
After dropping my guard with that udder comment, I'd better go in hard with some deep probing questions.
Do you come to these shows often?
Yes, fine. Yes, we've been coming back 5 years.
5 years. And I mean, you go to all the other shows in the district.
Yes, we go to quite a few.
The tannoy is pretty noisy. I couldn't quite hear you. What is it, for the money? A lot of cash in these sort of...
Oh, no, it's pleasure with us.
Yeah?
Only pleasure. We breed them ourselves. We never buy any cows in. We breed them all ourselves, and we like to think we've bred a good one.
I mean, apart from the rosette, is there a prize money?
Oh, yes, there's prize money, yes. I think it's about £25 for the first prize.
Oh, that's all right.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I can see why you go to all the shows now. That would just about cover the petrol to get
That's
there.
right, yes. Yes, it would.
25 quid, woo-wee. Hope the tax people don't find out about this new cash industry. Doesn't seem enough in it to buy a decent hangover.
The judge will now be selecting his champion of the show for today.
All this for 25 quid. Maybe it really is the love of competition. If you thought things were weird in the cattle ring, this vegetable tent will bring tears to your eyes. Now these blokes can take a tractor tyre off its rim with their bare hands, but in the bottom left-hand drawer of the bedroom closet lies their lucky piece of black cloth and a family paper plate, handed down from generation to generation. Every year their prized potatoes, onions, beans and mangoes are lovingly arranged, only to be scrutinised by the ruthless travelling judges. And to make things tougher, every one of the competitors is thrown out of the tent just before the judging starts. So the opportunity to bribe is greatly diminished. I managed to conceal myself behind a huge onion splay, hoping to get a chance to talk to the big daddy of the vegetable judges, Bob Herbert.
It's the sort of thing I wanted to see, Bob. World-beating onions. These are the biggest onions I've ever seen.
Not quite yet, Rob. The world record is 9 pounds 8 ounces. These will be averaging round about 3 pounds.
3 pounds?
Yeah, they has grown. They'll have grown outside.
A lot of steak sandwiches in them.
Quite a few. Cheese and onions we are come through, actually, not steak.
Are they good eating? That big?
Yeah, they'll be very, very mild.
I wanted to see some marrows that I could carve a kayak out of.
A kayak?
Yeah, you know, and paddle around. I always thought you'd got those big marrows.
Oh, not in this part of the world.
No?
No, you're not American, are you? We don't grow things big here.
I thought it was always English shows.
Yeah.
Is there anything left that you haven't judged that I could judge?
Yeah, you can come and judge these potatoes. A good class of potatoes.
I know potatoes.
About 15 plates of
I know
potatoes.
potatoes.
I'll turn you loose on them then.
All right. Great. So looking for form, uniformity and condition.
Shallowness of eyes.
Shallowness of eyes.
Yeah. So
and all these white potatoes I've got to judge.
Yeah, so I'll get you all sorted out and have a crack.
I'm going to go for these ones.
So pick them up and handle them and just...
See, they're nice and white. See, I like those sort of nicks in it. Makes it looks like a potato.
That's correct, yeah.
So what do you think? Is this the winner?
No, you're quite off beat a little bit.
It must have got a second, third.
No, I haven't got a prize actually.
No prize?
No. These are the winners here. These are your third, and these are your second. Nice, white, silky tater. Can you see the difference?
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
All right.
Well, maybe next year.
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
I'll have to read up on it a bit more.
Keep coming around with MVS, Julie. You'll learn a lot.
I will.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you.
So, it's not the kind of event that would normally make it to national TV, but it is what this show's all about. Family tradition, good times, the shallowness of eyes, according to the potato judges anyway. All these little local stalls, the country associations, the local people here for a good local day out. It's time to find out what makes this event tick. Les Spriggs is one of those famed Life Committee members. He's been on the committee since 1945. A committee that's met in the same pub since it was formed. Chances are he loves the pub, or he loves the committee. I'd say he loved both. Anyway, let's find out.
So, Les, this isn't your first show, is it?
No, far from it. Actually, it's my 60th.
You've been here every single year?
Every show there's been, yes.
It's unbelievable. What sort of association have you had with the show?
Well, my father helped to start it. He was one of the founder members, and when he retired, they asked me to go on the committee to take his place. That's 45 years ago.
So you've been on the committee for
45 years, that's right, yes.
Why do you think you get such a big turnout?
Well, I think, first of all, it's the family atmosphere of the show. A lot of people come here and meet people they've only met perhaps once every year, and it's a nice setting. I think everybody agrees with that. And there's, of course, originally, the show was started on what was Claycross Week's Week.
Right.
And the idea was they'd get people, all the factories and foundries and pits in the area were closed on that day.
Right, I see.
And they originally arranged the show for them.
Because most of the people here are fairly local, aren't they?
Oh, yes, but the surprise, you get a lot of visitors from outside, but most of them are local.
What a guy. Every single show, and he still obviously loves every minute of them. This is the England I'd imagined. Higgledy-piggledy, crazy-looking stone fences, small farms, cute-looking cows, and a tradition that refuses to go away. Anyway, enough of that. Time for another tradition. A warm beer and a chat, hopefully with Jeff Brailsford, the Il Presidente of this year's show.
Jeff, made it. Sorry I'm late. Take a seat. Thanks a lot. Now, before we talk, I just need a beer.
Could you bring a glass of beer, please?
The great thing about Jeff's tent is that you don't have to queue 10 deep for a beer. And everyone needs a beer at the end of the day because it's not all about hard work. The camera never lies. Just take a look at the thirst on these guys, the 1925 Founding Committee.
My father, I'm proud to be able to say, was the first secretary and almost the instigator of the show, I would like to think. It was his idea to have this small country agricultural show where the locals brought the cows, the horses and the sheepdogs for competition, you know, with one another. Friendly competition, we hope, and it's progressed to what it is today.
What do you think he'd think if he saw it today?
I've wondered that. I think he'd be very proud. I'm sure he would, yes, because he was very, very involved and made the show his life.
So, what about today? Been a success?
A really successful day, I would think, yes. I'm sure we will have a crowd more than average, which we estimated 12,000, which I feel is a very good crowd for this size show.
Well, that's it. If more outsiders knew about these things going on, I guess there'd be fewer of these things going on. Ash over shows a great English secret. Let's keep it that way.
Rob Poole, who's now back in Australia. And that's all from Countryfile for this week. Until we meet again, goodbye.
On Sunday, Julian Pettifer explores the natural history of heaths and moorlands, which spread throughout the British Isles after ancient Britons first took axe and fire to the wild wood to make space to farm. That's Safari UK on Sunday afternoon at 5:35 on BBC One.